So I feel like the gaming industry is saturated with a lot of content around gameplay and let's plays, playthrough, all that sort of thing, but I feel like there's a lack of the analytical side of gaming. Because I'm a nerd, I enjoy the analytical part of gaming. So today I'm gonna take my first stab at a video essay, and we're looking at Detroit Become Human. I initially filmed this video to reflect on a game that I really loved and still enjoy to this day. However, during the initial recording, which you will see momentarily, I brought up a celebratory point about the civil rights and social activism imagery in Detroit Become Human. But as I was editing and doing more research, I realized what I failed to do is truly explore the complexity and nuance with using that allegory in this game. I'm going to be inserting myself at various points to further elaborate on my thoughts and also to present counter-arguments. The very last thing I want to do is spread information or opinions that could be potentially harmful, especially as it relates to communities of color. Are my opinions debatable? Sure. We're human beings, you're allowed to disagree with me. But I really want to be transparent about sharing both sides and fairly presenting my argument. So I know this is the longest intro ever, but there's two things I want to preface that this video is not about. Number one, David Cage. I've seen a lot of controversial things floating around about him. He's the director / game developer of Detroit Become Human. We ain't gonna be talking about him. And number two, plot inconsistencies or plot holes. At the end of the day, Detroit Become Human is a game and a fictional story, so those types of things are not gonna be perfect. And also I figured those types of issues aren't just subject to Detroit Become Human, it's subject to other story games like it as well. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Hi everybody, my name is Asmara and welcome back to my channel. Here I aim to represent the stories of people of color through gaming, creativity, and conversation. Today I'm going to be talking about Detroit Become Human. This game I am obsessed with. I absolutely love. I don't know, that statement obsessed might be a bit of an understatement. Detroit Become Human is my current favorite story mode game. If you're not familiar with story-driven games, essentially, the game gives you the plot for you. It's basically like watching a movie, but it's a game, and you get to make different decisions to affect the outcome of your story. So I'm gonna give you guys a brief synopsis of Detroit Become Human. So Detroit Become Human is a story about androids or robots, basically human-like robots that are learning what it means to become human. These androids start showing human emotions, they start showing signs of empathy, and the human world sees this as a threat to their humanity and to society. The whole story is about navigating or kind of like a war between the androids and the humans. It's a conflict about what it means to be human and can machines actually develop empathy. But deeper than that, the theme is basically what does it mean to be human. The game traces the perspectives of 3 different androids. You have Marcus, who's played by Jesse Williams, which first of all, he is so fine. But Marcus, his android assignment is essentially to be a caretaker for a quadriplegic man. I believe that's how you say the word. Let's look this up. Quadriplegic. Okay. So Carl is a quadriplegic man. He is a retired artist, and Marcus is his caretaker. And then Marcus also kind of becomes like a son, another son to Carl, which is a cool dynamic to see. His experience with coming human is kind of like liberation or coming awake. Marcus is essentially the leader of the revolution, the android revolution, which is kind of like the civil rights movement of this game. Your second story is with Kara. Her android assignment is to be a homemaker. So she cooks, she cleans, and she was assigned to a house with a single father and his daughter. And the father ends up becoming really abusive to the daughter, Alice. Kara's journey to becoming human has her become like a mother figure to Alice. The third story you're tracing is Connor. Connor is an android. He's a prototype, so he's the first of his kind, designed to help the police force and the FBI with investigations, or not the FBI, I think just the police force, law enforcement. His journey is basically deciding whether or not he's going to continue to be on the human side and not develop, I think, emotion or empathy for these androids who are committing crimes and increasingly becoming more human-like, or is he going to empathize with them and become one of the deviants? Is he going to complete his mission, or is he going to go against his programming? I want to touch more on like the civil rights parallel that this film draws. One of my favorite lines from this entire game, I'll insert a clip of one of the LPs I've watched, but the scene that I love the most, this might be a spoiler, is when Kara and Alice visit Rose's house and seek for help or refuge. This is like when the police force are really cracking down on the androids, trying to shut as many of them down for becoming defect and becoming more human-like and showing emotions. And so a lot of the androids are trying to escape to Canada, and so Kara and Alice, they were told that Rose would be able to help them. Kara asked Rose like why she's helping androids, and Rose gave a response which I thought was really powerful. I'll insert the clip here.
Why are you helping us? Most humans hate androids.
My people were often made to feel their lives were worthless. Some survived, but only because they found others who helped them along the way.
And so I really love that quote, and that's especially relevant, I think, for the times we're living in today, where there are constant messages of Black people being made to feel worthless. Of course, this is not a new phenomenon. There are just so many messages in general as a minority, and I'm gonna speak from my experience as a Black woman. There's so many subtle and overt messages that are forcing us to make us feel small and perpetuate the idea that our lives don't matter as much. Whether those are in subtle or overt ways, whether our lives, our existence is an inconvenience to others. And so I thought that that was really powerful imagery, and that was kind of, you know, a powerful line in the script. And it got me thinking of how I just really appreciate civil rights and social issues being shown in video games. The reason I liked seeing civil rights in this game is because the oppression conversation was issues that I was familiar with. The plight of the androids essentially embodied an experience and issues that I could resonate with and that were familiar to me. I never thought that like the idea of oppression would ever be the focus of such a huge AAA game that was played on a large scale. And as empowering that can seem in theory, it's a bit more complicated than that. Throughout my research, particularly searching for Black voices on the matter, I came across a few articles making the argument that comparing a fictional robot revolution to the very real bloodshed, hatred, violence, lynching of thousands, if not millions, of real Black people in the American civil rights movement is not a fair comparison. I also read that using these seemingly performative Black characters like Rose can indirectly imply that the civil rights movement is over and like the fight for racial justice is over, which, as we've all seen over the course of 2020, is just simply not true. So I want to elaborate on my thoughts a bit more. I personally don't think this game was meant to directly compare, you know, a fictional robot revolution to very real events in history, like civil rights, for example, or even like the Holocaust or immigration. Depending on what path you take, those are also other examples of social activism imagery that this game alludes to. I think most people can agree that robots and all those things are not a fair comparison and are not equal. However, the civil rights imagery in this game is not necessarily subtle either, so I do think this game was intended to at the very least, have their audience ponder these very real social issues, with using the metaphor of the androids to represent a general marginalized people. I think a lot of the civil rights imagery in particular was also probably meant to represent, you know, the real dehumanizations that real marginalized people have had to go through, but again, using this fictional metaphor. In a few of the articles I've read, people were saying that making the comparison of an android to a minority is just inherently bad and that analogies shouldn't have been made, period. I also did read that it's not fair to make an allegory to civil rights or these other social issues and then never really directly address the issues that this game is making an allegory to, and I do think that there's some validity to these points. Doing so seems to like dumb down the real weight of these social issues and civil rights issues to a sci-fi robot story. There's also one other thing I wanted to mention. I've seen also some conversation that people are being too sensitive and like are taking this too deep, and I personally think that's gaslighting. Look that up. I think people of color and people who actually face a marginalized experience that this game is clearly alluding to, they can all feel different ways about it, and I don't really feel like it's somebody else's place to tell you how to feel about this game that is clearly talking about an experience that you, your ancestors, your people have had to go through or are still going through, discrimination that we're still going through. So I don't think it's a matter of people being too sensitive. Now, you can disagree with the way people express their feelings, but again, let's also not try to gaslight people when it comes to conversations like this. So I just listed a few examples of how the civil rights imagery and social activism imagery in this game can potentially be seen as problematic, or at the very least be seen as performative. So why do I still like this game? One of my favorite video essay channels, T1J, I think addressed this issue pretty well in his video titled Performative Wokeness. I'll link the video down below, but in essence, he said,
so sometimes things that seem performative can actually turn out to be helpful. Other things, like art, are inherently performative. So we might be tempted to dismiss things like these murals that are popping up all over the country. Is it just more symbolic wokeness that doesn't actually get anything done? In my opinion, a giant sign that says Black Lives Matter and defund the police right down the street from the White House is pretty powerful. I think all of these murals and other kinds of art can be potent and moving, as all art can. So I think symbolic gestures can be fine as long as that's not all you're willing to do. But I personally think there's a place for art within activism.
I think for me, I've always just seen entertainment in games and media as a huge platform that we could use to help spread like positive messages and to help create empathy. I love using art as activism, and I love using art to elevate others. I know some people might want, again, like video games to be an escape for them. They don't play games for the same reason that I do. And so like if that's what you want, like that's your prerogative. But I really like how Detroit was an avenue to explore those other people's experiences, because a lot of white people played this game, and so not to say that they all got something from it, but I'm hoping games like this, where they're literally created to help produce empathy. Empathy was pretty much the theme of the game. What it means to be human, what it means to be marginalized, ostracized. Those were all themes of this game, and so if you could resonate with the characters in here, there is no reason you can't resonate to this happening in the real world to Black people and other marginalized groups. Now, of course, I am biased because I really do like this game and I really do enjoy its storyline. I thought the messaging about what it means to be human was very powerful, and Detroit and games like it can help inspire feelings of empathy for other people groups to better understand. I say that very lightly because, again, the sci-fi robot revolution is not a direct comparison to civil rights or other social issues, but I felt that Detroit could help inspire more feelings of empathy towards people who are marginalized, since you're playing as a marginalized representation or marginalized allegory in this game. And I thought that was particularly powerful because, again, in gaming, this is an industry that is oversaturated by white voices, and a lot of white people played this game. Not to say that white people can't be a part of other marginalized groups, but I'm kind of particularly talking about like racial groups. You know, the gaming industry is dominated by white, straight men. Let's just be honest. Those are the people that are getting the platforms, at least. Not that the rest of us don't exist out here. Granted, Detroit Become Human was written by 2 white males, so again, I guess if that was what their intent was, it's kind of counterproductive to do so. You know, if you were so pressed to tell, you know, a story about civil rights and about social activism and marginalized people, it would have been nice to, you know, have someone from the marginalized people, the real marginalized people, to consult, to see should I use this imagery? How should we put this imagery in here? You know, consult with the people who actually experience those issues. But I digress. I can talk about that another time. So back to my original question. Is the social activism imagery in Detroit Become Human helpful or harmful? And like a lot of things that matter in this world, it's pretty freaking complicated, but I personally think it can be a little bit of both. Reducing the plight of real Black Americans in this country from the civil rights movement by appropriating iconic imagery such as, you know, the Black Power fist, the Black Lives Matter fist, putting androids on the back of the bus, using clips of MLK and Malcolm X and other speeches by Black civil rights leaders. All those examples and more can be seen as problematic because you kind of just appropriated it, and it can be seen as you're reducing the actual weight to, again, a sci-fi robot story. And so reducing this memorabilia and imagery to something that is really not important or real at all can be seen as harmful. In addition, they also kept that imagery very surface level, so it came across as them wanting to make a statement about racism and oppression, but also not wanting to come off too political or too controversial, so we got this performative wokeness. But what I do think Detroit did well is that it caused me to think. I found myself asking questions like, how is this imagery I'm seeing relevant to the world I'm living in today, and what from this game can I take into the real world? What I got from this game is that what it means to be human is to love somebody before yourself, and to be a part of a family, even if non-biological, like Kara, Luther, and Alice. What it means to be human is to fight for freedom like Marcus, and to empathize like Connor, even if it means going against your interests or your programming. Amidst the hate and selfishness that inevitably lies within humanity, we are often quick to forget that we have a lot more in common than we do different, and this messaging can be applied to real marginalized groups in our society. Thinking about the messaging in this way can be helpful. I think the use of machines was meant to indicate that sometimes we can act more cold like machinery than warm like people. I think Detroit created a world to show us, to be a reflection of humanity. Granted, Detroit could have done a lot more world building to have avoided appropriating real historical events, especially if they wanted to use androids as their allegory. On the contrary, they could have potentially been trying to make a point about repeating the past in the near future. But like I said before, using androids to represent real oppressed people is not an equal comparison. At the end of the day, Detroit Become Human was not created with ill intent. Ignorant and performative? Maybe. Probably. Yes. But not maliciously, I don't think. But just because the civil rights imagery is performative, I don't necessarily think that it means it's not worth trying to execute, even though Quantic Dream could have gone about it in a much different way. If they wanted to make a point about oppression and oppressed people, this performative activism with androids is not the only type of activism they should be doing, especially when real people are experiencing the things they alluded to with these fictional android characters. Whether they intended to or not, what they actually produced is the same, if not more impactful, despite their intent. So I feel like Quantic Dream should take responsibility, or at the very least acknowledge what they actually did in regarding to their appropriation of civil rights imagery and androids, because us Black people and other marginalized groups aren't just tripping over the imagery shown about us and our people in this game. Again, going back to gaslighting. This is why we hire Black people, y'all. I think there's fewer conversations about Detroit being a solid storyline and a really intriguing plot, and more conversation about the way they went about it and how they did it. Now again, I don't want to seem like the how does not matter, because especially with Quantic Dream being like the huge company that it is, it's not like they didn't have the resources to do this better. It's not like this is an indie game or anything. This is a real studio with real developers. It's not like they couldn't hire Black people or other people to, you know, contribute to this project on the matter and see if the how was effective. Because even if they say that this game was not about civil rights or social activism, it clearly was about civil rights and social activism. If not one of many themes, that is definitely one. Yo, as I'm editing this video, I'm watching another person's playthrough of Detroit, and I just saw this clip used in one of those main menu scenes.
Did you know Detroit was on the Underground Railroad? A route for slaves escaping into Canada during the American Civil War?
Was that targeted? Is that prevalent to me because I'm Black?
Yeah, those types of things don't just get put into video games like on accident. This game is about civil rights. Should the oppression conversation and marginalized experience just be kept out of video games, period? Or maybe would these stories be best told from the perspective of real people who faced a marginalized experience? I personally think yes. What a concept. Again, I really enjoyed like seeing that representation of civil rights or social activism imagery in the context of a video game, because at the end of the day, gaming is a form of media. Just like how film and TV, they also tackle these heavy issues in a variety of different ways. I don't think games should be subject from that either. And of course, if this is not what you play video games for, you don't have to play these games, like that's fine. But I don't think games should just object themselves from the conversation. They're a huge form of media, and it's also media can be used again for making messages. I personally really appreciate when media tries to make social messages, because to me it's powerful, of course, when it's done effectively and right. Now, I personally can't think of any decision-based story-driven adventure games to compare Detroit to that, you know, executed that social activism theme like effectively. Not that they aren't out there. If there are, you know, feel free to fill me in the comments. But I don't really have that comparison to say, okay, Detroit, maybe you could have done better by taking, I don't know, elements from this game. Again, I think my only suggestion would be like if they wanted to make a statement about marginalized experience, maybe to avoid some of the performativeness that could be seen from this game. They could have actually consulted people from the marginalized experience that they were drawing from, whether that again was civil rights, that was immigration, or Holocaust themes. Another part of me also feels like this is a situation where it's like they damned if they do, they damned if they don't. Like if they address the race conversation, they would obviously come across as too political. Like I'm gonna give an example, Life is Strange 2, for example, which I'm actually gonna make another video on that. But at the same time, if they don't address a race issue in a game that's clearly about race, even if they're using, you know, this sci-fi metaphor to talk about this issue, not talking about it can also be seen again as performative and not really being fully authentic or fully conscientious to how real marginalized groups that they're drawing these allegories from feel about this representation and imagery, even again if in a metaphorical sense. But that's just my thoughts for now. I'm allowed to evolve and change. If another game comes along and executes maybe this civil rights theme better or more effectively, that could be seen less like it's appropriated like real historical events, I'm willing to change my mind. But for now, I really enjoyed Detroit Become Human, and I just kind of wanted to share it and talk about this civil rights imagery with you guys. So let me know what you think in the comments. Was the civil rights imagery in Detroit Become Human harmful or helpful? Of course, and if you have an opinion on this subject that you want to share in the comments, just be respectful about it. Whether you agree or disagree with me or somebody else in the comments, just be respectful when sharing your opinions, if you choose to do so. If you've seen somebody play Detroit Become Human, or if you've played Detroit yourself, comment below who is your favorite character, Kara, Marcus, or Connor. My personal favorite is Marcus, and that's again because I like the revolution theme. I'm all here, you know, about Black liberation. I'm all here about leading revolutions, leaders, change makers. That is the stories that I think ignite me the most, and those are the characters that I am drawn to the most. So that's why I really like Marcus. I also think Jesse Williams is a good cast for him, because Jesse Williams is known kind of to be about Black liberation, is known to be an abolitionist. He's known to kind of talk about issues that affect marginalized groups, and especially Black people. So I thought that was a good calling. I liked, or a good casting call. You know, we rock with Black protagonists as well, especially in video games. We do not get to see that very often. So that's pretty much the video. I want to do more of these commentary videos about games and about, you know, other social issues and other topics that interest me. So I want to make one of these video essays once a month. Next month is actually going to be about The Sims 4 and a pretty hot button issue in the community surrounding that. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and comment, subscribe, all those YouTube things actually help other people find my channel, so I greatly appreciate that. I actually have a goal of reaching 150 subscribers by the end of the year, so you can also help me out with that. And if you enjoyed this and want to keep watching, I have another commentary video called Growing Up Black on YouTube Gaming. I'm gonna link it. I believe it's up here. I always point to the wrong side, but I think it's up here. Anyways, Growing Up Black on YouTube Gaming. It's basically me reflecting on my experiences growing up black in the YouTube gaming space, and representation issues around that. So if you enjoyed this video, you might like that. So go ahead and check that out. But my name is Asmara. My goal here is to represent the stories of people of color through gaming, creativity, and conversation. And I will see you soon. Bye, you guys.